All right, so it's been a minute since we've been working on trucks. Been very busy over the Christmas. Gonna need a wrench, buddy. Been very busy over the Christmas period and Thanksgiving, going up to see my brother in Oklahoma. We'll have a video on that posted at some point. And having family down for Christmas, you know, it's been pretty busy for me. But in that time, I managed to line up a deal on another second chassis for the truck. And I didn't really want a chassis. What I really wanted was just a back axle. But practical reality is that, like, yeah, I didn't want to sell just a back axle. And I also turned out I needed some front springs, which this thing has. And, you know, by the time you're all kind of said and done, there's a lot going on here. And it just turned out that the best decision that I could make was just to go ahead and buy the whole chassis from him for $300. So I did that. Now, I did have to pull the shackle pins out and move the axle forward to get it home. You can kind of see sort of what I've done over here to get that done. And then we also ended up cutting off the back approximately, I don't know, like 4 feet of the chassis. Well, 3 feet of the chassis. It was hanging out by a substantial amount. So what I ended up doing is I cut off the chassis rails right behind the double chassis section where it was convenient for me with the oxyacetylene when I was there. So that's what's been done. What I'm going to do is Jack and I are going to sit here today. We're going to go through and we're going to strip everything of use off of this chassis that we could use in this build. We're actually going to scrap a fair bit of stuff, but we're definitely going to keep all the controls off the transmission, including the lever, because I'm probably going to adapt this lever onto my own transmission. I have an NV4500 I'll be using, but this one looks more cooler. I've got the parking brake handle. We'll be able to use that in the build as well. I got an extra drive shaft, which is really nice because we can also utilize that. And all of the Ford fine thread bolts. Jack is currently stripping brake parts off the thing. All of the little brake retention clips. You'll get there, buddy. And we're probably also going to strip the running board stands off it and just generally get everything done there and move forward. Now, somebody at some point in this thing's life has gone ahead and clipped off the horns off the front. So I'm not sure exactly when that occurred, but that was definitely done on this truck. And yeah, we're just going to kind of carry on and get it finished. So I'm going to set the camera up on montage mode and we're going to take video of us stripping everything that we can off this thing. We'll see how far we can get. I definitely want to get the back axle off, the wheels off. I want to get the spring packs off the rear axle, spring packs off the front axle. I'm setting up jack stands so we can get everything elevated. And we're just going to kind of carry on and get it done. So, yeah, fun times. All right, so we're back here. We're gonna get this finished up. Yesterday it got dark before we started really working, and I broke the microphone mount on my camera, so I didn't really record anything. But we did manage to go ahead and get the transmission out and everything of value salvaged there. That is currently in the back of the truck, ready to go to the scrapyard. We are going to be quite militant here about the things we're not keeping. We are gonna snip the chassis right here at the knuckle, and we're going to keep the straight section all the way back to here. I got to measure it, but I think it's a good solid 8 feet, and that's going to go on the back of one of my other trucks as a replacement for its missing chassis. I think that's going to be quite good.
Is it going to go on my F8?
Possibly, Jack. We'll have to see. Anyway, we're going to finish this up and get everything all packed away. We can't leave this out front. We do have to get this done and processed. So that's the big task for today, and we're going to get cracking on it. Alright, so we're here today getting back on doing some Coleman work. I've got the front Coleman axle here apart on the desk, and what I'm looking to do is I have got to do a teardown on this axle, and I'm genuinely hoping that we're going to find that the center chunk or the main differential and the ring gear and pinion are the same as the one in the Coleman, and that they're in better condition. I bought this as a part chassis, drove 5 hours to get it. Didn't notice until I was home that the chassis was actually off of a 47, not a 48 like it was advertised. That's kind of an easy mistake to miss. The chassis is almost identical. The cab mounts are very slightly different, and the brake drums are different. The 48 and up brake drums, the drum attaches on the outside of the flanges with a couple of screws, whereas on this with the 47, the drum is actually attached from the back with nuts or the studs are pounded through. So the newer one's way better for maintenance purposes. I'm just hoping at this point that the center chunk is going to be the same. It looks the same. It's the same Timken style axle. It's definitely a Timken axle. There's a couple of minor differences in the casting bosses, so we'll just kind of see. Hopefully the internals are all the same, and as long as the ring gear and pinion are the same, I'm going to be in good shape. So we're going to go ahead and get started pulling this thing apart. I'll put the camera in montage mode. Alright, so I've got the hubs off, and we're going to pull the drain plug here and see what comes out. I had this upside down, and only oil seems to have come out, so that's a really good sign. So we'll go ahead and pull this oil plug and see what's up. And it's pretty empty. Well, there was at least a little bit of oil in it. We'll find out what the ring gear looks like soon enough. We'll go ahead and whip all those bolts out and pull this right side off and see how we fared. Fingers crossed that it's the same as the other one I have. Time will tell. Alright, we're here at the moment of truth. We're going to go ahead and pop this thing out. I've got 2 bolts, one top and one bottom with nuts on them, so that it's at least somewhat controlled. And we'll just see what happens here. I'm going to go ahead and call a success here. There are some like super minor manufacturing differences, but I don't think it's anything that's actually going to affect being able to use this center chunk and ring and pinion. They're both 40 teeth. Super happy about that. I got to check the number of teeth on the pinion. The pinion in my axle has 6 teeth. I expect this pinion has 6 teeth as well. And this is in absolutely great condition. The bearings are all in good shape. There's not a mark on the gears. They look like they've been meshing well forever. It's going to be, I think, a really great replacement compared to the level of pitting that's present on my original one. So I think we actually succeeded with this, even though it wasn't quite exactly as we expected it to be, seeing as it's 1 year earlier. It doesn't look like they actually made any changes in the center chunk of the axles, and all of the updates were actually in other locations. So I'm super thrilled with that. I think this is going to fly. And now what we can do is we can move forward on reassembling the center chunk of the Coleman front axle. And I'm looking forward to getting that done and getting it off of one of my many benches. Basically everything is plugged up with this project, and I really like to start making some progress moving forward on this. So it's going to be able, we're going to give it a good cleaning, but the mesh surfaces look great. We can take a look at that here, and we can see that they're all really nice. So it's going to be able, we're going to give it a good cleaning, but the mesh surfaces look great. We can take a look at that here, and we can see that they're all really nice. So alright, so we're here today, and I've got actually a trip up to my dad's place later. I salvaged the chassis to get the rear end out of it for my Coleman, and really I just wanted the ring gear and pinion, but we salvaged basically a whole chassis. And we're actually making a trip up to my dad's place. We're going to help Uncle Jules load a little forklift that he's rescuing. And since we're going up to Dallas area, we're going to stop by and see our dad. And since we're there, I saved the back half of this chassis for an F8 truck, a 1948 or 49 F8 that I have, that's missing the back end of its chassis. And so consequently, this is actually a bit big and unwieldy to handle, and since we're going to need to split it down to weld it to the other truck anyway, in order to splice it all together and make use of this, what I've decided is the best thing that we can do is just go ahead and split the chassis here. It's going to make it easier to handle, it's going to make it easier to store at Dad's place, and we're just going to go through and do that. So I've kind of already gotten started here, and I'm setting young Master Jack to work at this. I've gone ahead and hit the top of every single rivet with the angle grinder to give us a good place to start, and then what we're going to do is a partial drill out of the rivets. We're going to use a cold chisel to knock off the tops, and then we're going to punch out the rivet from the bottom. And that's going to let us pull this whole chassis apart. All right, done. Split that chassis down into manageable pieces. that we can prep and weld into the F8 chassis at some point in the future. This is an F5 chassis rail. Honestly, it's more than enough for kind of the vintage trucks that these are, but it's good chassis steel. And even though we buckled the inner chassis to get it out, this isn't the first time I've done one of these things, and what we'll do is we'll just straighten that all back out and we'll be good to go. It's not too terribly hard. We'll have to descale it and all that, but for right now the pieces are now a manageable size, and that makes just everything better and easier to deal with. It was too heavy to handle before, and it was in the way with the size that it was, and now we've got this done. All the chassis sections are marked out, and the really nice thing about this is that I'm going to be able to go through and splice this in really well with the existing chassis and have really good joints and stagger the joints a little bit, because we pulled the inner chassis rail out, and we'll be able to weld it all up and have full confidence in that joint. Unfortunately, one of the F8 trucks was an air brake truck, and I almost guarantee you that they torched the chassis off because the rear axle was locked up. And that's pretty common with air brakes, and unless you have the little retention bolt that allows you to deactivate the air brakes, if you try to move that, you're basically done. So I think that's why that truck ended up with the rear chassis clipped off. The other F8 that I have has a hydraulic brake system, and it didn't suffer from that issue. The very first one of these that I split, I was probably 19 years old, and the funny thing is that I did it with exactly the same cold chisel and 2-pound hammer, the one that's on the ground over here with the wire wrapped handle right there. That exact hammer is what I used to split the very first F5 chassis that I had for the Coleman. Unfortunately, that truck was salt rusted in northern New York, and the chassis was basically Swiss cheese. I probably lost half of the outer rails, and the inner rails were just gone, and that's what salt rust does. Now, this is a nice southern truck, which is partly why I thought these rails were worth salvaging, and I'm really happy that we went through and split them all the way down, because that's a lot easier to do here in my own shop than it is to do in the field at Dad's place. So overall, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I think this is going to be a win. Good stuff.